The topic for today is how we can achieve CAN network security with help of IDPS, including some hardware assistance from NXP Secure CAN transceiver. So we will be focusing a lot on that. So we have an agenda on how we would drive through that topic. So the start will be to look into the let's say motivation for really using an IDPS in the vehicle. Then we will look into the benefits of using IDPS or intrusion detection and prevention solution with a focus on CAN network. Then Karthik will talk about NXP's secure CAN transceiver, that is TJA1153. I will talk more on ATAS CAN IDS solution, and then we will look into the joint solution from NXP and ATAS that can help you to implement an IDPS with a hardware assistance. And then at the end, we will have time to answer your questions. The goal of the webinar is, first of all, giving you a regulatory background, why we are really doing IDPS. Then we will look into the IDPS methodology, and where we will try to explain you ATAS and NXP's approach towards IDPS based on a year-long experience. We will give you some real insights on, let's say, how you can leverage hardware support to enhance IDPS solutions. And then we will find, let's say, look into the right balance for this. So where we will learn how to fortify IDPS systems to address security threats effectively. So without waiting further, let's look into the motivation for IDPS. So one of the key driving factor for IDPS is regulations, apart from others, like the reputation damage if your car gets hacked and a lot more. But regulation is one of the key factors which is driving IDPS. So UNR 155 is one of them, but I mean, if you're in China, there are some GBTs which have some requirements regarding IDPS. So if we focus on UNR 155, one of the key points in R155 is that you should be able to detect and respond to security incidents across your vehicle fleet. And in detail, it says that a vehicle manufacturer shall implement measures for vehicle type to detect and prevent cyber attacks against vehicle of vehicle type. It should support monitoring capability of the vehicle manufacturer with regards to detecting threats, vulnerability, and cyber attacks. And they should also provide data forensic capability to enable analysis of attempt or successful cyber attacks. So if we really look into the requirements from UNR 155, it does not say that you need an IDPS, but the requirements for UNR 155 is really not possible to, or really hard to fulfill without an IDPS. So let's say if we look into how IDPS is helping us to fulfill this requirement. So when the requirement comes to detecting and monitoring attacks, so an IDPS consists of sensors, or it can be software sensors, and those are software sensors are really monitoring either the CAN bus or Ethernet bus or a host itself, and they are detecting if there is a potential anomaly or intrusion. And if there is an intrusion or anomaly, that creates a report or event that can be reported to the cloud. So if you don't even have a sensor or an IDS in the vehicle, you won't be able to detect things. So this is where we see IDPS is not explicitly required by UNR 155, but the requirements are hard to fulfill without it. So I talked about like monitoring the network for CAN or Ethernet, or really also monitoring an ECU or OS. So here we classify it into network-based IDS and firewalls for CAN and Ethernet. Here, what we can detect is like we can detect malicious internal CAN messages. We can some examples of like mentioned here. Another is like we can detect diagnostic access on the OBD port. We can detect man-in-the-middle attacks, denial of service attacks, and a lot more. When it comes to distributed IDS, here the focus is more on high performance computers, so we can detect unauthorized detection of system event logs or introduction of malicious software, man-in-the-middle attack, and a lot more.
So here we talk about the secure CAN transceiver and how it helps with UNECE R155. So basically, you can see here the rows highlighted in blue, where we show how the secure CAN transceiver is also able to help with, for example, first of all, having authenticity and integrity of messages by use of the CAN ID pass and block list. We can also help to prevent denial of service attacks by having flooding protection on the CAN network. And we have certain rule sets within the transceiver that we will explain further that allow you to then, that allow IDPS systems to basically be able to rapidly identify the compromised sender nodes. So the transceiver is enabling to achieve certain of the mitigations that are required for UNECE R155.
Thank you, Karthik, for this introduction. So now we will look into the benefits of an IDPS with a focus on the CAN network. So, I mean, I tried to, at a very high level, talk about like network IDS and host-based IDS, but if we really look into the terminologies, IDPS is not one component, but there are multiple building blocks that you build together like a Lego or connect together, and then it is really offering you detection, monitoring, and let's say forensic capability. So it is mainly classified into 4 different areas. One is network intrusion detection system. So the network intrusion detection system is responsible for monitoring a particular kind of network like CAN or Ethernet. And here from ATAS side, we offer IDS for CAN, IDS for Ethernet, and firewall for Ethernet. Then comes host-based IDS. The host-based IDS is not monitoring network, but it is really monitoring a single system, like a vehicle computer running QNX, Android, Linux. So we really monitor those specific OS or hypervisors, and then we can, if we and we can monitor it and find if there is something wrong, and we can create event reports. Then comes IDS distribution framework. So both host-based IDS and network IDS are IDS sensors. So they are detecting an intrusion or anomaly and then creating an event report. So now what to do with the events? So the IDS distribution framework is more responsible for aggregating those events at an ECU level, but also at the complete vehicle level. And then once it's aggregated, it is pre-qualified in the vehicle itself and then sent to the backend on the cloud side. And on the cloud side, we have a vehicle security operation center. So what is the value proposition from ATAS on our product Cycler IDS for CAN? So basically, the challenge is that the OEMs are responsible for security of their vehicle throughout the lifetime, not just when it is going into production. And now it's also legally required that you need to do continuous security monitoring. So our CAN IDS solution is a ready-to-use sensor or an aggregator and management components all together to realize the continuous security monitoring requirements. The benefits is that we provide visibility on in-vehicle anomalies, and that is not only for detecting anomalies, but also it helps you to for validation and quality when you are developing your vehicle. So during that time, you can use our IDS to detect if, let's say, for example, there is a message which was supposed to be in a previous generation of the ECU, but not in the new one. You can detect it while developing IDS configurations. And this will help you in fleet security monitoring and attack mitigation. And the advantage is that our components fulfill current automotive quality requirements, as well as is optimized for ECUs of today, as well as for future. And this is a purely white box security approach. So how is our CAN IDS helping to fulfill the UNECE requirement? So, I mean, one of the, let's say in M15, in 11.1, they say, give an example of detecting malicious internal example CAN messages, where you need measures to detect malicious internal messages or activity should be considered. So we are really targeting that point with our product CAN IDS. And that also includes diagnostic message inspection and a lot more.
But if you could relinquish the control. Great. Thank you. So now I will talk about the NXP TJA 1152 and 1153 secure CAN transceivers. Just to give some history, we saw a clear need for this transceiver in the market because there was a rapid rise in cyber incidents. It's a six-fold increase just between 2019 and 2021. And if you look at the nature of those attacks, the vast majority were remote access to the vehicle. So it's not physical access directly into the communication network, but access from a remote entry point. So it becomes a question of not if there is an attack on a vehicle, but when there is an attack, because there are a number of access vectors into the vehicle space. And here I also list some CAN attacks that were carried out into the vehicle network that either resulted in compromised key functions, like even compromised shutdown of powertrain ECUs or hacking of the CAN bus and wireless transmit of vehicle data, but also even a fatal collision in a region because of tampering of car data via the CAN network. So this is exactly where we saw the need for designing a hardware-based security solution, because automotive CAN networks, as you know, weren't designed for security, and these remote scalable attacks are on a steep rise. Automotive CAN networks weren't designed for security because they were designed at a time when the vehicle wasn't really communicating with the outside world. So we've seen a rapid adoption of the secure CAN transceivers in the market. So it's heavily sourced. It is used all across the vehicle for telematics, instrument clusters, steer-by-wire, gateway domains, ADAS domain, door control, and body domain, really for several different ECUs that are using CAN network communication. So I will explain the features of the transceiver that have enabled us to obtain this traction in the market. So the TJA 1153 is a hardware-based security mechanism. So it's a standard CAN or CANFD transceiver with some CAN ID-based message guarding capabilities. It is a retrofit, so it is compatible pin-to-pin backward compatible with some of our standard high-speed CAN and CANFD transceivers, and you will have that information available in our slides. It is a software independent firewall from the perspective of doing the CAN ID filtering. So it serves as a sender-based security mechanism. And it's also, because it's in the path of the communication between the MCU and the bus, as I show in this picture here, it can also directly prevent denial of service flooding attacks on the network. And I will explain that in more detail. And last but not the least is, of course, the idea of PS enhancement, for which we have allocated dedicated time on this call. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of the features of this transceiver, it has, here I show you 3 ECUs where you have a attacker that will enter this network and is trying to attack this ECU3, which is expecting to receive ID 300, which is legitimately owned by ECU1, and ID 400, which is legitimately owned by ECU2. ECU1 is protected with a normal CAN PHY, and ECU2 here is protected with our secure CAN PHY. So what you will see now is that, let's say that there is a compromised node, so ECU2 has been compromised, and the hacker is carrying out a spoofing attack where he pretends to be ECU1. Then only legitimate ECU2 messages, which are owned, in this case, ID 400, which is legitimately owned by ECU2, will be allowed onto the network by the secure CAN PHY because of the transmission pass list, which acts as a hardware transmission filter. and any other IDs are blocked. So when he sends ID 300, which belongs to ECU1, the transceiver will block that and basically switch to secure mode, which then temporarily disconnects that MCU from the network. And only in the instance of the legitimate ID, which is in this case ID 400 being set by ECU2, does that get onto the network. So this way, you can always be sure that when a PHY is protected by the secure CAN transceiver on that network, the IDs that are sent by that node are the legitimate ones. So of course, this is only one half of the puzzle. On the receive path, if you look at the same scenario, now we are looking on the side of the bus with the PHY, and we have a block list for the CAN IDs. So that what this means is, in this case, if ECU1, or basically another node than the one that is protected by the secure CAN PHY, is compromised, then when that hacker tries to send an ID that legitimately belongs to ECU2, which is in this case ID 400, then on the bus side, we are looking at that and blocking that with an error frame. So the hacker is not able to compromise this ECU, which is the target of the attack, because the error frame will basically invalidate that message. And so by the combination of the pass list and the block list, you are effectively getting, let's say, authenticity for the communication, because that ID 400 is always sent by the legitimate owner of that ID. So you can also imagine a situation where there is an attempt to carry out a man-in-the-middle attack. So in this case, let's say you have this ECU here, which is protected with the secure CAN PHY, and then the target of the attack is an ECU3. And the compromised node here is one that is not protected by the secure CAN PHY. And what happens in the case of a man-in-the-middle attack is that the message is legitimately initiated by this ECU, which is protected by the PHY, and then the hacker will attempt to insert rogue data during the transmission field or during the transmission of the data by ECU2. Of course, this would involve a bit flip attempt by ECU1, and so you would have to have a modified CRC as well. And so even if that is successfully done and there is a modified CRC, the secure CAN PHY is basically seeing ECU3 will acknowledge the new frame with the new CRC, but ECU2, which is protected by the secure CAN PHY, sees the valid CRC, but also sees that it's not sent by the local host. And so this is then used to infer the fact that there's been a tamper attempt, and that is also then invalidated with an error frame. And this is useful to protect during the error passive state of the CAN controller, because in error active, you would normally not, you will have an error frame directly generated by the CAN controller due to the bit flip. But in the error passive state, that doesn't happen, and the secure CAN PHY will protect the ECU in the error passive state of the CAN controller. And last but not the least, here is also a feature for the denial of service protection. So basically, if you have a network and there's a compromised, say, kind of central node, it's got access to high priority messages. So it's very easy to flood the bus with those priority messages, which would then jam the CAN communication and prevent the other nodes on the network from communicating. And this could even pose a safety risk, because those CAN nodes could be carrying critical communication, and when those frames don't show up on time, that could have serious impacts. So with the secure CAN protecting that node, what happens is we provide configurable thresholds in terms of the maximum bus load that this node is able to generate, so that at all times the traffic is below those user configured thresholds. And the IDs are, of course, restricted only to the legitimate IDs that that node can send. Just to be very clear, the secure CAN PHY is always protecting from the point of view of the sender. So it's protecting so that this node here wouldn't flood the bus. It still means that if another node is compromised here and is not protected by the secure CAN PHY, it would still be able to flood the bus, right? So the fact that it's on the path of the transmission of that particular MCU is how it's then, with those thresholds that are set, you are able to protect that network by using the CAN PHY. This is a feature of the transceiver. It can help from a security standpoint, but also if you have a software-induced babbling idiot scenario where you have basically then a software-triggered babbling of that ECU, that will also, by setting these thresholds, you can be sure that your CAN communication is never jammed. And AUTOSAR SecOC, for example, does not really protect against this type of flooding denial of service attacks. So the secure CAN is really a way, by its unique position in the network, able to protect from this kind of attack. So um, just to have a quick comparison of the secure CAN versus AUTOSAR SecOC or secure onboard communication, these are not, they're not really to say one versus the other, but I often hear questions in terms of how one works versus the other. So it's good to make sure that everyone's on the same page on this. So first thing to remember here is that the secure CAN is for the local CAN bus communication. So it is not an end-to-end security mechanism. It doesn't know what's happening in a gateway. So if you have a compromised gateway, for example, there's no way for the transceiver to know that. So it's really about that local CAN bus communication and using the IDs, as I showed you, to be able to prevent certain types of attacks. So it can protect from the flooding attacks as a consequence of that. It is independent of the MCUs, and whatever is being done is being done by the transceiver. It's also being done in real time. So as I mentioned, those CAN airframes are going out and invalidating the messages in real time. So there's really no added delay or bandwidth. Whereas, as you know, any kind of cryptographic mechanism, the delay scales with security because you will be adding more bits into the security mechanism. And another important thing is it's very easy to test and validate because it's a sender-based security. So you only need the sender to be able to test and validate the security mechanisms coming from the transceiver. Whereas in a sender and receiver-based security, you will typically need to have your full network in place. And last but not the least, it's also compatible with legacy ECUs. So I'm just going to quickly show you some product overview just so you know. So we have an 8-pin and 14-pin version, and the 14-pin version is the TJA 1153, which is backward compatible with our TJA 1043, and the 8-pin versions are the 1152s, which are backward compatible with our 1042, 49, and 44. And you will also receive this information in the slides, and these are automotive grade 1 qualified parts, and we have both 42 volts and 58 volt bus robustness. There are also more documents in terms of data sheets, application notes, and so on available for our NDA customers at nxp.com. We also have a lot of publicly available collateral on the secure CAN transceiver. So you will have access to all of these links. So please feel free to take a look at it. And we have evaluation boards as well available via nxp.com that will allow you to test the features of this transceiver. So just to recap, as I said, we have these transmission pass and block lists and user configurable thresholds for being able to protect against flooding attacks, and we generate CAN airframes with a CAN engine. And last but not the least, we will go into more detail on the compromised sender identification. So over back to you, Sid.
Thank you, Karthik. So now we will look more into details of how ATAS CAN IDS solution is working. So let me go to the next slide. Our CAN IDS solution is called Cycur IDS CAN, and it is a purely C software. So nothing special from a, let's say, it's not dependent on a specific hardware. So it can work individually. So the idea is that it monitors all forwarded CAN traffic, and based on the patterns, it can detect anomalies or potential intrusions. We also provide you a configuration tool. So with the help of configuration tool, you can generate the rule sets automatically, and you can also simulate those in the tool itself. The IDS generates logs or event reports, and it can be logged, let's say, stored locally in an NVM, or if you have an IDS manager, you can connect to that and also somehow share it with the OEM backend. We offer heuristic and signature-based detection on the ECUs. And with this overall solution, basically the ready-to-use software solution can be used for legacy ECUs, current ECUs, as well as the future more high-performance ECUs. It's compatible for all of them. And this then helps you to continuously monitor and report anomalies to the backend. So basically fulfilling the UNR 155 and other requirements. So more into details of what I described before. So that's the workflow here. So in the tool, you import the vehicle CAN database information. So the OEMs have invested a lot of time and money to define the vehicle specification or the ECU specification. So we import the DBC or ARXML files which define the communication of that ECU into the tool. And with that information, you can generate effective and efficient rule sets. And the rules here can be automatically generated for most of the rules, but when you want to implement complex detection rule sets, here you can do some things manually. So it's more like so you generate some rules automatically and then you fine tune it and you can make more complex rules on top of it. We offer more than 30 different detection features. Some examples here are, let's say, frequency detection features. So if the frequency is too high, it can define that there is some kind of message injection. If the frequency is too low, it can represent either the ECU is faulty or someone tried to take the ECU out or shut down the ECU. So we can do that. Also, another example could be that if there is a diagnostic request while driving to shut down an ECU, so which is not normal, so we can detect this and we can report it. So these are just very few features, but we have a very long list of feature sets that you can utilize to implement your rule sets for IDS. Yeah, so after you are done with the configuration, as I said before, the tool also allows simulation features. So after you have generated the IDS rule sets, you import real vehicle recording and run it against the rule sets. And in the tool itself, you will see how the IDS will behave in the real vehicle. And once you are satisfied with the false positive and detection rates, you can export the configuration directly out from the tool and it can be installed on the ECUs. So this is a screenshot of how our tool looks like. It's very simple and straightforward. So what you see on number one is basically a tree view of ECUs, buses, and messages, signals, etc., based on the ARXML and DBC files. What you see in number two area is more of the details. So you can actually select all the messages where you want to apply different rules. Multiple can be selected together, and you can either right click and apply different kind of rules, or what you see is number three is like the list of different detection features which you can apply on messages. And then we always, what you see on number four is an online help tool. So whenever you are doing configuration, we have an online help all the time that will help you and assist you in doing the configuration. And then we have an online console and a message visualizer all the time to help you in doing the configuration. And this tool is all delivered to, so we don't own the tool. Let's say if you have our CAN IDS solution, the tool comes together, and be it the OEM or the tier one, anyone can do the configuration on their own, but they can also ask ATAS to do it for them. So coming to our IDPS solution overview, I mean, with our CAN IDS solution here, I mean, I talked about IDS sensor. So so CAN IDS is one of the IDS sensors. So here in your vehicle, you may have multiple IDS sensors, some running on microcontrollers, some on microprocessors. The idea is that all the IDS sensors are generating events. You will have few IDS managers which will be collecting or aggregating logs from those sensors at ECU level. And then there will be one IDS manager. In this case, it's sitting on the telematics control unit, which will be aggregating events not only from that ECU, but from the entire vehicle together. And then it can be sent to the cloud or the VSOC with help of reporter. And this is where CAN-IDS is reporting as one of the components for monitoring. So the question is, why ATAS? What is different here? So, or what is the value we are offering? So our solution is purely a white box security solution. So you receive the configuration tool. You can import. If you have confidential information for in-vehicle specification, you don't need to share it with anyone. You can take control of the rules. You can do it everything on your own. And you know it's a deterministic system, so it will behave as expected. The configuration tool provides automated rule generation and simulation. So also, ATAS provides the complete continuous protection ecosystem. So we don't only provide CAN-IDS as a solution, but as I showed before, there are multiple building blocks that helps you to implement the complete IDPS, some on the in-vehicle side, some on the backend side. So ATAS has experience with all of them together, and we apply our learning from the providing the entire ecosystem to make the product better. And these are different building blocks, but it can work together very well. But it's also possible that you have CAN-IDS from us, but there is manager coming from someone else, and VSOC is coming from someone else. So basically, these are different building blocks which can work together very well with or without ATAS components. It's a rule-based software only intrusion detection system, so it's highly efficient. The footprint and performance is optimized for small ECUs of today. And basically, when we develop CAN-IDS, it is designed together by Bosch and Scrypt engineers. So where Scrypt, our security company, where we apply our security knowledge, and as Bosch invented CAN, so it was more like we have experts from the CAN side who developed the tool together. So overall, with IDS, you stay in control of cybersecurity and your IDS rule sets with the white box security approach. You have excellent detection at low footprint and high efficiency. It's a part of our entire ATAS holistic IDPS ecosystem, and we offer to trust the automotive cybersecurity expertise with our quality proven in field. So we are market leading security products provider, and our products have been used in millions of vehicles. So we have experience in security there. So now we will look into how, we explained about how CAN-IDS is working. Karthik explained about how the secure CAN transceiver from NXP is working. So now we will look into how a joint solution from ATAS and NXP can look like, which will help you and with an hardware-assisted IDPS.
Thank you, Sid. So as you can see in this slide here, we show the secure CAN transceiver, and here you have, say, your host microcontroller. When there is a compromised host, what the secure CAN does is, as I've mentioned, in the case of a violation of the transmission path list or violation of the thresholds for flooding protection, then we will issue an error frame, and that is a 6-bit or 11-bit error frame that is user configurable. And this 11-bit error flag is really a signature of the secure CAN transceiver. So when this transceiver switches to secure mode, it issues that 11-bit error frame, which can help the IDPS monitor identify that indeed this was a secure CAN induced error frame, which means that the secure CAN detected a violation or a compromise in the network. So once that information is available, it is possible for the OEM to basically design, for example, discrete hardware logic that would allow to reset the host microcontroller and thus kick out the intruder by secure software verification of the host. So this is why we have that signature. Then if you look at what else is being done, we issue the 11-bit error frame, but also when there is a compromise, we issue, basically we pass through the block listed message. So if there's a block list, the bus block list is able to pass that message on to the RX of the host microcontroller, which then if you have IDPS sitting on this microcontroller, is able to generate a violation report that can go to the IDPS monitor. So not only do we invalidate the message with 11-bit error flag, thus, let's say, preventing any immediate harm, we are also able to pass through that block-listed message to the host microcontroller. And then that, if you have that IDPS software in there, you are able to report that and leverage that. So we will show you a demonstration of this with the 2-node setup further down. Before that, I will give it over to Sid to explain the IDPS portion of this.
Yeah, thank you, Karthik. So, I mean, as I mentioned before, our CAN IDS solution has more than 30 or 35 different detection features. So here we demonstrate one of them, or we show one of them, that how it's called "You Send My Message" feature. So the picture you see on the left side, it's more of, let's say, an ECU1 here has an IDS running there. So when typically if you receive or you see messages on a bus, you will see flags which will determine whether it's a TX message or RX message. And if, let's say, ECU5 here is injecting some message which was supposed to be sent by ECU2 or ECU4 or any other ECU, what ECU1 will see is that there is a message on the bus which I did not send, but I still see it. So, which means that it will really clearly know that there is a message on the bus which I did not send, though it's allowed, but it is not supposed to be sent by me. So there is someone else who sent it, and it is very low cost feature. So from a resource point of view that we have in our IDS, and it will clearly help you to determine that someone else is trying to inject messages which are ideally allowed, but they are not coming from the right source. So this is what the "You Send My Message" feature from our CAN IDS solution can help you with. The pictures or the screenshot you see on the right side is more coming from a joint demo we have with NXP, where we really demonstrated this and some other features. And yeah, that's a screenshot of that. So in the next slide, actually, we will show how it's really working.
Yeah, thank you, Sid. So, so let me just set up the scene here because there's a lot going on in this slide. So we have two ECUs, an ECU A, and this ECU is basically the compromised ECU and is spoofing ECU B, right? And ECU B is the legitimate owner of ID 25, and ECU A will send that ID 25 on the network. So the secure CAN transceiver is here on ECU-B, but there's also a secure CAN transceiver here protecting at ECU-A. So when that compromised ID is sent on the bus, first of all, the secure CAN will invalidate that message with an error frame. And secondly, it will pass through that block listed message to the host microcontroller. So you can see here that the target ECU was basically only receiving an invalid message. And then because this ECU detects that ID 25 on the bus block list when it goes on the bus, it is then relaying that information to the host microcontroller, which when equipped with the Secure IDS software is able to report that information. And how that is then used by the Secure IDS, Sid will explain in more detail.
Exactly. So as I shared in the previous slide, so after the secure CAN transceiver figured out it is not the right message. It also basically send the invalid frame, but also it send this frame to the ECU or the microcontroller, which is Cycker IDS, where Cycker IDS is installed. And here, the Cycker IDS is really analyzing this message and also maybe the pattern, and it is able to determine that that yes, this message is again allowed, but it is not coming from the right source. I am the right owner of this message, but it is coming from somewhere else. So here we are getting support from NXP CAN transceiver, where we already get a good level of filtering at the hardware level. But when it comes to further inspection and detection, this is handled by CAN IDS running on the microcontroller. And when it is determined that it is the message is right, but someone else sent it, not the right source, we create a report and an event report, and that can be sent to the cloud with help of reporter. So this is, let's say, a joint solution which we want to demonstrate here. But it's, as I said, it's just one use case. There are multiple other use cases that you can implement with a joint solution here.
The one other thing that we want to bring across here is the secure CAN transceiver, when installed also at ECU-A, is basically cutting off this spoofing node from the network temporarily because of the secure mode feature. And so if this node is then cut off from the network, that can be used proactively by the software to basically ping and check for a response from the different nodes to rapidly identify the compromised sender node, because only one guy is cut off from the network and is no longer communicating. So that's also the advantage that comes from having that node disconnected temporarily from the network.
Yep. To conclude here, with our joint solution from ATAS and NXP, so with the IDS, you are really supporting towards UNECE requirements, specifically M10, where it says that the vehicle shall verify the authenticity and integrity of messages it's received. M13, which is measures to detect and recover from denial of service attacks. And 15, where it's more about measures to detect malicious internal messages or activity should be considered.
Yeah, and as we've tried to illustrate in the earlier animation, you are also able to improve the time to root cause in a spoofing or flooding attack by identifying that sender node, because that sender node is cut off from the network. And with the bus block list that then reports that message ID to the host, which has the IDS software, you are also getting the information on exactly what was the, let's say, the ID that was used for the compromise and the attack. Not only that, because of the fact that the hardware is cutting off that MCU and invalidating immediately with an airframe in real time, you do get that element of prevention of the attack even on the very first instance, because once that message is invalidated with an airframe, then there is no impact on the victim of the attack because of the hardware-based airframe generation. So with these aspects of leveraging the features with the hardware cutoff of the compromised sender node and the airframe, and the software picking up this information and relaying it to the IDS monitor, you're also able to then quickly ping and identify your compromised sender node on the network. So you're really able to bring down the time to root cause on where in the network you had the compromise.